The planet Nerith was covered in snow and ice. Cold winds blew across empty lands. White mountains stood tall like frozen giants. Nothing green ever grew here. The sky was always gray, and the sun was weak. Life was not easy on this planet. Inside a deep cave, hidden under one of the snowy peaks, lived a group of alien dragons. Their scales were white like snow, and their eyes were pale blue. They were called the Velkhari. These dragons were once strong and proud. They could fly high and breathe frost fire. Long ago, they ruled the skies of Nerith. But now things had changed. The Velkhari were old and weak. They had not flown in many years. Their wings were cold and stiff. Food was hard to find. The planet had become colder, and dangerous storms arrived more often. Their great heating core, a large machine that once kept the cave warm, was broken. Without it, the inside of the cave was freezing. The leader of the Velkhari was an elder named Raun. His scales were cracked, and his breath came slow. He sat near the broken core, his eyes full of sadness. "We are the last," Raun said one night. "The sky has forgotten us. Let the cold take us. It is our time." No one answered. The other dragons looked down. Even the younger ones had lost hope. But one dragon, a young one named Veli, was not ready to give up. "There must be a way," Veli whispered to himself. "There must be someone out there who can help." Far across the ice fields, something strange happened. A ship fell from the sky. It was a small human cargo ship, damaged during space travel. Alarms rang. Lights blinked red. The ship spun and hit the ice with a loud crash. Snow flew high into the air. The metal broke, and the engine went silent. Inside, one man survived. His name was Tommel. He was not a soldier or captain. He was just a mechanic, a man who fixed machines. He had short brown hair, a tired face, and oil stains on his jacket. Tommel woke up slowly. His head hurt. The ship was cold. Systems were down. "Great," he muttered. "Crash landed on a frozen rock. Just my luck." He checked the damage. The engine was beyond repair. The radio was broken. Supplies were low. "I need to find shelter," he said to himself. "And maybe some heat." Tommel grabbed a toolbox, a heat pack, and walked out into the cold. The wind hit his face like knives. Still, he kept going. He found an old outpost, not far from the crash. It was covered in snow but still standing. Inside, it was dark and dusty, but the roof was strong. He repaired a small heater and made a place to sleep. For the next few days, Tommel searched for parts. He explored the ice fields, looking for metal, wires, and batteries. He was used to fixing things. That's what he did. He didn't talk much. He didn't complain. He just worked. One evening, while returning to the outpost, Tommel saw something strange. High on a cliff stood a tall, white figure. It looked like a giant lizard with wings. He froze. The figure didn't move. It just watched, him with glowing eyes. Then it turned and disappeared into the snow. Tommel blinked. "Did I just see a dragon?" he said. Back in the cave, Veli returned from the cliff. "I saw him," he told the elder Raun. "A human. He walks alone. He carries tools. He fixes things." Raun shook his head. "Humans bring war. They destroy." "This one is different," Veli said. "He's not a fighter. He is a maker. Maybe he can fix the core." Raun looked at the broken machine. It was silent. Cold steam rose from its cracked surface. "No human would help us now," Round whispered. "Not after what we've lost." But Veli didn't give up. That night, he flew low across the snow and dropped a small metal piece near the outpost, apart from the broken core. It was his way of asking for help. Then he flew away. The next morning, Tommel stepped outside. The wind was calm. The sky was quiet. Then he saw it. A strange piece of metal in the snow. It wasn't from his ship. It was smooth and curved, with symbols on it. Tommel picked it up. "This isn't human," he said. He looked around but saw no one. "Someone left this for me." His mind began to work. His hands turned the metal, checking the shape. "This is part of a heat core," he realized. He looked out across the snow. Maybe someone else is out there. Maybe they need help. Inside the cave, Round closed his eyes. The cold was deep. Even his heart felt frozen. But in the far corners of the cave, young Veli stood tall, hope shining in his eyes. Somewhere beyond the snow, a human mechanic had found the clue. And soon, the fate of the Velkari would begin to change. The cold wind of Nereth blew softly over the snowy land. Tommel stood outside his small shelter, holding the strange metal piece in his hand. The shape was smooth. The edge was worn down, but the symbols on it were clear. "This doesn't belong to my ship," he whispered. The piece looked like it came from a power system, maybe part of a heating core, but it was made with alien metal, not from Earth or any human planet. He looked around the empty white fields. Snow fell slowly. There were no tracks, no sound. Still, Tommel felt it. He was being watched. He took the metal piece inside the shelter. He cleaned it, studied it, and placed it next to his toolkit. "If someone left this for me, they must want help," he said. "And if they're using a heat core, they're trying to survive this cold, just like me." Far away in the deep cave, Veli waited. He sat near the broken core, watching the soft blue light fade slowly from its center. The core was dying, just like his people, but in Veli's heart, a small spark had lit. He had seen the human. The human had picked up the clue. "He will come," Veli said. Round, the elder, didn't answer. He sat quietly, eyes closed. The other Velkari didn't speak either. Most of them believed no help would come. They were simply waiting for the end. But Veli didn't stop hoping. The next morning, Tommel walked toward the direction where he had seen the figure on the cliff. He didn't know exactly where to go, but he followed the land, past frozen rocks, old ice cracks, and silent snowfields. Hours passed. Then he saw it, part of a rock wall covered in strange markings, symbols carved deep in a circle. He touched them. Suddenly, a sound came from behind him. He turned. There stood a creature, tall, white, and silent. Its wings were folded, its tail curled around its legs. Its eyes were light blue, glowing slightly in the snow. Tommel didn't move. The dragon took one slow step forward. Tommel raised his hands to show he had no weapons. The dragon looked at his tool belt. Then it slowly dropped something on the ground. Another part. It rolled near Tommel's foot. Then the dragon spoke. Its voice was rough, like wind over stones. "You fix warm place?" Tommel blinked. "You want me to fix something? A heater?" The dragon pointed to the metal part, then to the mountain behind it. "Come." Tommel followed the dragon through a narrow path hidden under snow and ice. They entered a cave, cold but deep. Lights glowed softly on the walls, old machines still barely alive. Inside, the air was quiet. Then Tommel saw them. Dozens of white dragons sat in the darkness. Some were large and old, others were young and thin. All of them looked tired. One dragon stood up, and the biggest one. His scales were dull, and his eyes were full of age. Round. He stepped forward. The young dragon spoke again. "This is Tommel." Round looked at the human, his voice low and slow. "Human, you are not welcome, but you came. Why?" Tommel nodded, toward the broken heating core behind them. "I saw the part. I thought someone needed help. I fixed things. That's all I know." Round narrowed his eyes. "You fix machines, but you cannot fix what we have lost." Tommel walked toward the core. He looked at the cracks, the melted wires, the empty energy cell. He touched the surface, felt the weakness in the structure. "I've seen worse," he said. "I can try." The dragons all looked at Round. He did not speak, but Veli stepped beside. "Tommel!" "We believe," Veli said. "Let him try." Tommel started checking the system. He opened the core's side panels, checked the broken tubes, and scanned the cooling vents. The design was not human, but it was clever. The Velkari had once been skilled builders. He turned to Veli. "I need parts, wires, crystals, and something to hold energy." Veli nodded. "I know where some are, but far, in storm zone." Tommel stood. "Then we go." Round raised a wing. "It's too dangerous." Tommel didn't stop. "You asked why I came. I didn't plan this. My ship crashed. I'm stuck here too. But I can help. Let me do what I'm good at." Round looked at Veli, then back at Tommel. "Go. But if you bring harm, we will not forgive." Tommel nodded. "I understand." That night, Tommel and Veli prepared for the journey. Tommel packed tools, rope, small heaters, and a scanner. Veli stretched his wings, tested his claws, and carried a map burned into a piece of metal. They stepped out of the cave together into the deep snow. The wind was strong, but they walked forward. As they moved across the ice fields, Veli asked questions. "Why you fix things?" Tommel smiled. "Machines don't lie. If they break, you fix them. If they work, they thank you with warmth, power, or light. Simple." Veli nodded slowly. "You are not like others." Tommel laughed. "I get that a lot." That night, they stopped inside an old human station half covered in snow. The roof had fallen in, but some lights still worked. Tommel found a power cell. Veli found old metal pipes. They shared dried food and warm water. Veli looked at the stars, through the broken roof. "We used to fly," he said softly. "Long ago." Tommel looked up too. "You will again," he said. In the cave, Round sat silently. The cold air pressed against his scales. But for the first time in many seasons, the old dragon looked toward the mouth of the cave and waited, not for death, but for a chance. The wind was sharp and cold as Tommel and Veli crossed a long, frozen plain. Snowflakes blew around them like tiny white sparks. The land was silent except for the crunch of their footsteps on the ice. Veli led the way, his tail dragging lightly in the snow. He moved with care. His wings stayed folded, and his eyes scanned the horizon. Tommel walked behind him, pulling a small sled full of tools and parts. The scanner in his hand blinked softly with blue lights. "This place is quiet," Tommel said. "Too quiet." Veli didn't turn around. "This was a city, long ago. My kind lived here. We flew above the towers. We had heat, food, light." Tommel looked around. There were no buildings now, only pieces of metal buried under snow and ice. A few bent poles stuck out of the ground like frozen fingers reaching for the sky. "What happened?" Tommel asked. "The storms came," Veli said. "Year after year. Then the hunters. We lost the skies. We hid underground." Tommel nodded. He didn't ask more. The pain in Veli's voice was enough. They reached a broken structure, half covered by a fallen cliff. Veli pointed with his claw. "Here. Old power station. Some parts may still work." Tommel stepped forward. The entrance was blocked by ice. He used a small laser cutter to melt through. After an hour of work, they got inside. The room was dark, but his scanner found energy still trapped in the lower levels. Tommel climbed down a broken ladder. He found a power cell, cracked but usable, and 2 long coils of wire. He smiled, not. "Bad," he said. He looked up and saw Veli watching from above, his eyes full of curiosity. "You understand these things like magic," Veli said. Tommel laughed. "Not magic, just logic, time, and a bit of luck." By evening, they returned to the cave. The dragons moved aside as Tommel and Veli entered. They had seen them leave and didn't think they would come back. Round watched from his place near the broken core. "You returned," he said, "and you brought pieces." Tommel nodded. "Now let's see if this works." He rolled out his tools and set up lights around the heating core. The Velkari formed a wide circle around him, silent and still. The core was large and shaped like a round heart. It once glowed with blue light and sent heat through the cave tunnels. Now it was dark and lifeless. Tommel opened the side panel and looked inside. Metal tubes were cracked. The main energy cell was empty. Wires were loose and some circuits were burned. Veli stood close, watching every move. "This part connects here," Tommel said, showing him the wire. "But we need to replace this connector first. It's damaged." Veli nodded. "I can help." He picked up a tool clumsily with his claw. Tommel smiled. "Not bad for a dragon." They worked through the night. Tommel cleaned the pipes. Veli held the light. Some younger dragons brought small parts from old storage rooms. The cave, once cold and silent, was now full of quiet movement. Round watched from a distance. He said nothing, but in his eyes there was a small spark, one he had not felt in many years. By the next morning, the repairs were almost complete. The new energy cell was in place. The wires were connected. The system was ready for testing. Tommel stood up and wiped his hands. "This is it," he said. "If the cell holds, the core should come back to life." He looked around. All the Velkari were watching. "Stand back. Just in case." He pressed the start button. Nothing happened at first. Then a soft hum filled the air. The center of the core flickered. Blue light began to glow. Slowly, heat flowed out like a gentle wave of warm wind. The dragons stepped back in surprise. Their breath no longer turned to frost in the air. The cave floor felt less icy. The walls began to shine as the heat touched old stones. Round stepped forward. His eyes were wide. "It lives again." Tommel smiled. It's not perfect. It needs more work, but it's a start. Veli jumped in excitement, his wings opening wide. You did it! Tommel looked at him. We did it! That night, the Velkari gathered in the central chamber. For the first time in many years, they sang. Their voices echoed through the tunnels, like wind and water mixed together. The sound was deep, ancient, and full of memory. They sang the song of first fire, a song once used to welcome newborn dragons into the warmth of the world. Tommel listened quietly, sitting near the core. He didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning. He felt the hope. Veli came to sit beside him. We thought our story was over, he said. But maybe it is only the middle. Tommel nodded. There's more to do. This core is old. We need to make it better. We can build heat vents, water systems, maybe even lights. Veli smiled. With you here, maybe we fly again. Tommel looked up at the dark ceiling of the cave. We'll see, one step at a time. Outside, snow still fell over Nereth. The planet remained cold, harsh, and silent. But deep beneath the mountains, a single room was alive. The Velkari were no longer waiting to die. They were waiting to rise. The heating core worked again, and the Velkari cave was no longer freezing. Warm air slowly moved through the tunnels. Dragons who once stayed hidden now came out to stretch their wings and sit in the warmth. Some smiled. Others whispered songs from long ago. But Tommel knew the work wasn't finished. The repaired core was running on a weak power cell. It wouldn't last long. If we don't find better energy parts, Tommel told Veli, the heat will stop again in a few days. Veli nodded. There's a place far to the north. A ship crashed there long ago, old human tech. We never touched it. Too cold, too far, too dangerous. Tommel looked at his scanner and maps. We don't have a choice. That might be our only chance. Round, the old dragon leader, stood behind them. The northern lands are full of storms. Many who go there never return, Tommel said calmly. I'm not asking others to go. I'll go alone if I must. Round looked at Veli. Veli stepped forward. He won't go alone. I'll go with him. The next day, Tommel packed his sled with tools, food, and heating packs. Veli prepared his wings, tying a strong rope around his waist to help pull the sled when needed. Before they left, the Velkari gathered near the cave entrance. The wind outside was strong, and the sky was gray. Round stepped toward Tommel. You gave us warmth. That is no small gift. Come back alive. Both of you. Tommel gave a small nod. We'll try. And with that, they walked into the storm. The journey was long and cold. Snow blew in their faces, and the wind howled like wild beasts. Ice covered the land. Sometimes they had to climb frozen rocks. Other times they crossed wide plains where the snow was deep and the wind tried to push them back. Veli walked ahead, using his sharp claws to grip the ground. Tommel followed close, pulling the sled. Every step was slow and heavy. After the first day, they stopped in a small cave for rest. Tommel set up a heater and boiled water. Veli sat close, steam rising from his scales. You all right? Tommel asked. Veli nodded. My wings ache, but I'm fine. Tommel looked out at the snow. You ever think about leaving this planet? Veli shook his head. This is our home, even if it's cold, even if it tries to kill us. Tommel smiled. You dragons are tougher than most humans I know. On the second day, the storm grew worse. They reached a wide, frozen lake. The ice looked solid, but Tommel didn't trust it. "We need to cross it," Veli said. "The wreck is just beyond the ridge." Tommel tested the ice with a metal rod. It held. "All right, slowly," he said. They stepped onto the ice. The wind pushed hard. Snow swirled around their legs. Halfway across, a loud crack echoed. Tommel froze. Another crack came from under the sled. "Run!" he shouted. He and Veli ran forward. The ice behind them broke apart. Water rushed up from beneath. The sled slipped, but Veli turned back and grabbed it with his teeth. He pulled hard. Tommel reached the shore and helped drag it the rest of the way. They collapsed on the snow, breathing hard. Veli looked at the lake. "That was close." Tommel laughed softly. "Too close." By the third day, they found the crash site. A large human ship lay half buried in snow. Its back end was broken. One wing was twisted. But the engine core and power storage looked untouched. Tommel smiled. "This is it." They climbed inside. The air was cold and still. Frozen panels and empty halls greeted them. Tommel checked his scanner. "There's energy here. It's deep inside." They moved slowly through the ship. Broken wires hung from the ceiling. Ice covered the walls. A few old lights blinked weakly. In the engine room, Tommel found what he needed: a large fusion cell and 2 strong converters. "It's heavy," he said, "but it will power your core for years." Veli nodded. "Then we carry it home." Loading. The parts onto the sled took hours. The fusion cell was large, but Tommel built a support frame with metal bars. By evening, they were ready to leave. But the wind outside had changed. A massive storm was coming. Tommel looked at the sky. "If we don't leave now, we'll be trapped here for days," Veli growled softly. "We go!" They pushed into the storm. Snow hit them like sharp stones. The sky turned dark. The wind screamed. Tommel held on to the sled with one hand and used a scanner with the other to check their path. Veli leaned into the wind, eyes narrowed. They didn't speak. Every word would be stolen by the storm. Step by step, they moved forward. At one point, the sled flipped. Tommel scrambled to lift it. Veli helped with his teeth and claws. Frost covered their faces. Their legs felt like stone, but they kept going, on. The 5th day, they reached the mountains near the cave. The storm began to fade. They could see smoke in the sky, warm steam from the repaired core. Veli looked up and smiled. Home. Tommel fell to his knees and laughed. "We made it." Inside the cave, the dragons waited. Some had feared the worst. When they saw Tommel and Veli return with the large fusion cell, they cheered, a soft, deep sound like thunder under the earth. Round stepped forward. "You returned. With power." Tommel dropped to the floor, tired but smiling. "Let's finish the job." That night, Tommel connected the fusion cell to the core. He worked slowly, checking every wire and seal. When he pressed the switch, the blue glow returned, brighter and stronger than before. Heat poured through the cave. Ice melted from the walls. Dragons stretched their wings with joy. Round spoke to the others. "Because of this human, our fire lives again." Tommel looked around and felt something warm inside, not just from the core, but from the eyes of the dragons around him. He was no longer just a stranger on a cold planet. He was part of something now. Warmth returned to the Velkari cave. It moved through the dark tunnels like sunlight spreading after a long night. Ice melted from the walls. The ground softened. The dragons began to breathe easier. Their tired bodies now felt the comfort of heat. Tommel stood near the heart of the heating core, checking the new fusion cell. The lights on the panel blinked green. "It's working perfectly," he said. Veli, standing beside him, gave a soft roar of joy. For the first time in many winters, the cave feels alive. The dragons around them lifted their heads. Some stretched their wings. Others hummed softly, their voices echoing off the stone walls. Even Round, the oldest and wisest among them, stepped forward and placed one claw gently on the warm ground. "This is what we lost," he said, "and now we have it again." Tommel didn't stop after the heat was restored. He worked every day with help from Veli and the younger dragons. They repaired broken pipes. They cleaned old water tanks. They opened small side chambers that had been closed off for years. He taught the dragons how to use basic tools. Veli became his first student. Though his claws were large and strong, he learned how to turn bolts, lift wires, and even fix light panels. "Now you're a proper mechanic," Tommel joked. Veli smiled. "Maybe not as good as you, but I try," Tommel laughed. "That's all it takes." One afternoon, something special happened. Tommel and Veli were fixing a small control board that managed the heat levels. They heard a loud cry echo through the cave. It wasn't a cry of fear or pain. It was a song. The dragons were gathering in the central chamber. "What's going on?" Tommel asked. Veli looked excited. "They are preparing the fire dance." "The what?" "It is an old tradition," Veli explained. "When the first fire was lit by our ancestors, they danced under the sky to celebrate. We have not done it in many years." Tommel followed Veli to the wide, round chamber in the center of the cave. The floor had been cleaned. Glowing stones were placed in a circle. A small flame, taken from the core, burned gently in the middle. The dragon stood around it, wings folded, eyes shining. Round stepped forward and looked at Tommel. "Because of you, we have fire again. This dance is for you too." Tommel felt surprised. I don't know what to say." Round nodded. "You don't need to say anything. Just watch." The dragons began to move in a slow, graceful circle. Their wings stretched outward. Their tails drew patterns in the dust. Their voices rose together, humming a soft, deep song. Then, one by one, they blew streams of frost fire into the air. Beautiful white flames that sparkled and swirled like falling stars. Tommel stood quietly. His eyes were wide. He had never seen anything so peaceful, so full of meaning. Veli stood beside him. "This is who we were. This is who we are," Veli said. Tommel nodded. "It's beautiful." For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. No storms, no cold, just the warmth of light, the dance of wings, and the sound of dragons remembering their past. After the fire dance, the dragons sat together, talking and sharing old stories. Tommel listened as they spoke of skies filled with Velkari, of mountain, homes lost to time, and of their hope for flight again. "You can still fly, right?" Tommel asked Veli. "Not far. Not like before," Veli replied. "Our wings are weak from staying on the ground too long. The cold took our strength." Tommel looked thoughtful. "Maybe we can build something to help." Veli tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Tommel pointed toward the cave's entrance. "If we build a warm flight tunnel, you can practice flying without freezing. Just a few meters each day. With time, your wings can get strong again." Veli's eyes lit up. You would help us fly again? Tommel smiled. If we can fix machines, maybe we can fix dreams too. The next few days, Tommel and the dragons began building the tunnel. They used metal from broken chambers and wires from old panels. The tunnel stretched along the side of the cave, wide enough for a dragon to run and jump. Veli was the first to try. He stood at one end, wings open, heart racing. Tommel gave him a thumbs up. Just a short run, no need to go high. Veli took a deep breath, then ran forward. His wings flapped, lifting him off the ground for a few seconds. He landed, slid a little and stopped. The dragons cheered. Veli laughed. I flew, Tommel nodded, and next time you'll fly longer. Each day, more dragons joined the flight tunnel practice. Some fell, some only glided, but none gave up. Tommel watched them, always ready with advice and tools. You're getting stronger, he told them. One step at a time. Late one evening, Tommel stood alone outside the cave. He looked up at the dark sky, full of stars. Cold wind touched his face, but it didn't feel as cruel as before. Veli came and stood beside him. You miss your world? He asked. Tommel thought for a moment. Sometimes, but I think I was meant to be here. You found us. You helped us. Maybe you were meant to find us. Tommel smiled. Maybe. He looked at Veli. You know, you've changed too. You believed when no one else did. Veli's eyes glowed softly. Hope is a kind of fire. You lit it again in us. Tommel nodded. Then let's keep it burning. And so, the fire in the Velkari caves was no longer just heat. It was life, movement, and memory. It was the promise that even in the coldest place, something warm could still grow because of one human mechanic and one dragon who refused to give up. Snowflakes fell slowly outside the mountain cave. The wind was quiet for once. Deep inside, the Velkari dragons were flying short laps inside the training tunnel. Their wings were stronger now, their voices louder. The fire in their hearts burned, bright. Tommel sat on a rock, watching Veli land after a smooth glide. You've improved, he said, smiling. Veli stretched his wings. It feels good. Every time I fly, I feel more alive. Just then, a strange sound echoed through the cave. It was a low humming noise like a far-off engine. Tommel stood up. That's not from the heating core. He ran toward the main tunnel and climbed up to the surface. In the sky above the icy fields, a silver ship slowly came into view. It hovered in the clouds, blinking red and white lights. Its shape was long, like a patrol vessel from a human space station. Tommel's heart sank. That's a search ship, he whispered. The ship circled for a moment, then began to descend. Snow swirled around it as it landed near the edge of the cliff. Back in the cave, Round felt the tremble in the ground. He turned to the others. We are not alone. Tommel ran back into the cave. Human ship. It's landed near us. The dragons began to murmur with concern. Some stepped back in fear. Will they take you away? Veli asked. Tommel shook his head. They might try, or worse. They might try to take this place too. Round stood tall. We cannot be captured again. We have hidden for too long to be locked in cages. Tommel raised a hand. Let me talk to them. I'll try to make them leave peacefully. Round looked at him carefully. We trust you, but be careful. Not all humans are like you. Tommel stepped out into the snow just as the ship door opened. A ramp lowered, and 3 figures in cold armor walked out. One of them, a tall woman with a clear face visor, stepped forward. She held a scanner and looked surprised when it beeped. "You're alive," she said. Tommel nodded. "Yeah, I survived the crash. Been living here." The woman looked at him carefully. "We received a signal from your broken satellite. We didn't expect survivors." Tommel replied, "I fixed the satellite. Thought someone might hear it." "Who's we?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "You said we." Tommel stayed quiet for a moment. "There are others," he said finally, "but they're not human." The woman's hand moved near her. "Weapon." "Aliens? What kind?" "They're peaceful," Tommel said quickly. "They saved my life. I've been working with them to survive." Another soldier whispered something into her earpiece. "We picked up large heat signatures under the mountain," she said. "This place was marked as uninhabited." Tommel nodded. "That was before. Now it's their home. And they want peace." The woman looked unsure. "We'll have to report this. Unknown alien species. Potential threat." "They're not a threat," Tommel said firmly. "They've been hiding here for years, just trying to survive." She looked past him, toward the cave entrance. "We need to see them." Tommel shook his head. "That's not a good idea. They don't trust outsiders. If you come in with weapons, they'll think you're here to attack." The woman paused, then gave a signal. Her soldiers stepped back. "I'll go alone," she said. "No weapons." Tommel led her slowly into the cave. The path was warm now, and light crystals glowed along the walls. When they reached the central chamber, the dragons stood waiting. Round stood in front, tall and calm. Veli stood beside him. The woman stopped in shock. "They're dragons," she said softly. Round stepped forward. "We are the Velkari," he said in clear, slow galactic. "Common. We mean no harm." The woman looked around, surprised by how quiet and peaceful the dragons were. "You speak our language?" "We learned long ago," Round said, "but no human ever listened. Until now." Veli stepped forward. "Tommel gave us warmth. We gave him trust." The woman lowered her scanner. "I didn't expect this." Tommel looked at her. "Now you've seen it yourself. You know they're not dangerous. Please don't report this as a threat." She looked torn. "This is above my level. I'll need to tell my commander." Round spoke again. "If your people come with fear and weapons, we will hide again. Or we will fight if we must. But we only wish to live." Tommel added, "Please, let them be." The woman looked into Round's eyes. Then she looked at Tommel. "All right," she said. "I'll tell them the signal came from a broken machine. No life forms found. No need for follow-up." Tommel let out a breath of relief. "Thank you." Outside, the wind had picked up again. The woman walked back to her ship. Just before boarding, she turned to Tommel. "Are you staying with them?" Tommel nodded. "Yes," she smiled slightly. "Strangest rescue mission I've ever done. Good luck." Then the ship rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Inside the cave, the dragons cheered in their own way, soft roars and glowing frost fire. "You saved us again," Veli said. Tommel shook his head. "No, you saved yourselves." "I just helped." Round looked at the others. This time, the humans did not destroy. They protected. He turned to Tommel. "You are one of us now." Tommel smiled. "Then let's keep building. We've got a future to make. That night, the fire in the cave burned brighter than ever, not just from heat, but from hope. The Velkari were no longer hiding. They had been seen and accepted. The frozen world of Glaciera was quiet again. The sky above the mountains had returned to its soft gray color, and the snowflakes danced gently in the wind. Inside the warm cave, the Velkari dragons were not hiding anymore. They were preparing for a new life. Tommel stood near the edge of the training tunnel, holding a tool in one hand and a new kind of crystal lamp in the other. The cave was brighter now, and even the deepest tunnels were full of light and warmth. Round stepped beside him. "You have brought many changes," Tommel smiled. "Only with your help. We did it together. The dragons had learned to build. They shaped their tunnels, created stone platforms for flight practice, and used the heat cores to warm every chamber. Young dragons flew freely now. The old ones taught without fear. It was a beginning, not the end." One morning, Veli ran to Tommel with her wings half spread in excitement. "You have to see this," she said. Tommel followed her to the cliff outside the cave. From the mountain's edge, the snow-covered land stretched out for miles. But something was different. Large black stones were placed in the snow, in circles. Flags made of blue crystal cloth waved gently in the breeze. "They've made a signal," Veli explained. "A symbol, our symbol." Tommel looked closely. The stones formed the shape of a dragon curled around a star. It was the Velkari's old mark, once carved in caves, now reborn on the ice. Round joined them. "We are no longer afraid to be seen. We want others to know we are here." Tommel nodded. "Even if more humans come?" "Yes," Round said, "because we now have something we never had before. A voice." Days passed. Tommel and the dragons worked on a new chamber, one for learning. They used old human tech and Velkari memory crystals to teach young ones about stars, engines, and even languages. Dragons of all ages came to listen. One night, while sitting beside the central fire, Tommel asked Round, "What will you do now?" Round thought for a moment. "We will send a message, not just to humans, but to anyone who listens. A message of peace." Tommel agreed. "You've hidden long enough." The dragons had survived. Now they wanted to grow. The next week, a small tower was built above the mountain. At the top, a signal device, powered by fire crystal energy, blinked a bright light into the sky. Tommel had programmed the message carefully. In over 20 galactic languages, it said, "We are the Velkari of Glaciera. We seek peace and knowledge. We welcome those who come with open hands. We remember kindness." The signal repeated again and again. One clear evening, as the stars filled the sky, Tommel sat alone on the mountain ledge. Veli landed beside him. "You miss the stars," she said. Tommel looked up. "Sometimes. I used to dream of traveling between planets. Now I fix heating tunnels and teach baby dragons how to glide." Veli smiled. "That dream didn't end. It just changed." He laughed softly. "I guess you're right." After a pause, Veli asked, "Will you ever leave?" Tommel didn't answer at first. Then he said, "This is home now. I belong here." She looked at him warmly. "You always did." Weeks later, the sound of engines returned, but this time, no one was afraid. A new ship landed near the signal tower. It was not a warship. Its sides were painted with a peace symbol. Scientists and explorers stepped out looking curious, not hostile. Tommel walked out to greet them. "We got your message," one of them said. "We came to learn." Rown, Valey, and many others joined him. "You are welcome," Rown said simply, and with that, Glaciera was no longer forgotten. Months passed, and the mountain became a new kind of place, a mix of old and new, dragon and human. A research post was built near the cliff. Visitors came to study the dragon's history, to hear their stories, and to watch them fly. But no one stayed without the dragon's permission. This land belonged to the Velkari. Tommel worked as the bridge between worlds. He translated, fixed broken machines, helped both sides understand each other. But most of all, he smiled more now. One day, he walked through the learning chamber and saw a young dragon showing a human child how to read a memory crystal. That made him proud. On the anniversary of his crash, the dragons held a special flight ceremony. The sky was clear and the wind was gentle. All the dragons rose into the air, circling high above the peaks. Their white wings shone like ice under sunlight. Tommel stood on a tall stone, watching them with wonder. Veli flew low and called out to him, "Come join us." He laughed. "I can't fly," but she swooped down and picked him up with care. Soon he was in the air, the cold wind rushing past his face, the stars above glowing bright. He laughed louder than ever, and in that moment, he wasn't just a mechanic. He was a part of something greater. The albino dragons had once accepted a cold fate, forgotten, hidden, waiting for the end. But one human, lost and broken, had given them something no fire ever could: hope. And now they gave it back to the stars.